run a little school. This one just touched my heart. 100 little children, wonderful spirited teachers, 4 classrooms, and a little outbuilding that was supposed to be a kitchen. And what I found was the school, and the spirit was there, but the school was not equipped with the necessary educational resources and facilities that they needed to develop these small children.
When Warren Buffett, the world's richest man, famous investor, and a man who's given all his money to charity, is asked about his charitable contributions, he says he's a wholesale contributor. In other words, it's very easy for him to sign a check and give it to charity. He says his sister, though, is a retail giver. She gives time and energy to those less privileged. Today, we are talking to Deborah Terhune, a lady who also gives her energy and time, a retail giver. Deborah, it's wonderful to have you here. I want you to give us some background to your initiative, Growing Up Africa, but also how you made it from the social pages of the New York media to the rural areas in Mpumalanga.
I think it has a lot to do with my growing up in a small town in Pennsylvania. I find it interesting myself, David, that my life has actually gone full circle. When you and I can connect with rural and urban in a much more intimate way than from those social pages of New York. Well, I'm one of 7 children, 6 girls and a boy, in a town of about 2,500 people. Haven't been back in probably 30 years, but we didn't know we were poor. We didn't know we had nothing. And so we, from a very early age,
was your dad a farmer, or was he a...
My dad was trying to be a good father and just feed us.
Okay.
But he dabbled in almost anything that would help him make a living to do that. And one of the things that he would do as side jobs was construction. And he would throw us in the back of the bucky, and we all had a job. And he used to say, I'm paying the plumber to do plumbing work. I'm not paying him to do preparation work or cleanup. So we learned a lot about the trade just simply because we had to be the assistants to the...
6 girls.
6 girls and a boy. But I have to add, he didn't want 6 girls. He wanted 7 boys because he wanted help. So I learned a lot about the construction industry, but I had other dreams, and left home when I was 18 with a suitcase, and that was it.
So your career developed in New York?
My career developed in Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania?
Yes.
As a property developer?
Yes, as it was by default. I was a pretty crazy Twiggy in those days. I mean, a little fashionista. And I wanted a retail store. And everybody said, well, how are you going to do that? And I said, well, I'll just go to the bank. Then somebody, one of my friend's father, who was treasurer of the bank, said, no, Deborah, he said, we don't just give money for the sake of giving money. So I said, well, how do I get it? He said, well, you've got to have equity or collateral. And I said, oh, what's that? Where do I get it? Took me 2 years going to the same banker with the same balance sheet that said 0 assets, 0 liabilities, and finally the bank approved a loan to open a retail store. Now retail gives you a huge amount of experience in marketing and sales, and sales is my forte, I guess. I'm able to put ideas together and sell them.
This is I don't want to say a long time ago, but this is in a previous life.
Yes.
We're now talking in Johannesburg.
Yes.
What happened how did you get from Pennsylvania to Johannesburg?
This friend's father said, well, you have to have something that you own that we can take when you fail. and I said to myself, why would I do something knowing I'm going to fail. So I got in my car and I drove to a blighted area in the inner city because I knew I wasn't going to be able to afford anything else, and I bought the first building that had a for sale sign on it with no money down. Because back in those days, if you remember, you could get loans
100%
with
bond.
100% mortgage. The property side I started getting very interested in.
What transported you from that backdrop? Because you certainly never had Africa in your mind.
No, oh my goodness gracious, I was a hometown girl from a small town. What happened next was I ended up doing about 13 properties, but remember the tax credit. We started putting limited partnerships together where we raised our equity through these shares that we would sell to people who would want to own property and be involved in this rejuvenation of the inner city, but they didn't want to be a part of it. But that made it easy to raise the money because they were getting this enormous tax credit. Problem was that the tax laws were changed. And we had raised already $500,000 for the next project. We had to return all of those checks to those people.
So you moved to New York.
One of the investors was from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I didn't know him at all. And when he found out that the next deal wasn't going to happen, he said, why don't you go to New York? There was a developer who was doing a development in Pennsylvania that needed somebody with that experience in that geographic area. And they hired me to do some consulting work. Well, it was too much for me to travel back and forth from New York, so I took an apartment in New York City. And the day that I finally moved in and was finished moving, I was going out the door and this very attractive woman walks in the door. And it turned out that she was from South Africa, and she was with de Klerk's regime and was in foreign affairs. And we became great friends. And being new to New York, she was inviting me to all of these breakfasts and events that the South African government was having. So my circle of friends weren't New Yorkers or Italians or Chinese, they were South Africans. And after a number of years, they convinced me to visit South Africa. And when I came to South Africa, I was introduced to a number of property people, and they said, geez, somebody with your experience, why don't you come back and do some consulting work? And I said, I don't think so. Thank you, but no thank you. Well, 6 months later, I was back in South Africa.
And have you been here ever since?
20 years.
20 years.
And then I moved back to New York. But now, where did growing up Africa come into the picture? I would go to the bush quite often. But I'm not an early bird, and sometimes it's too cold at 4 o'clock to go out on that drive. And I was more interested in how do these people live, and how do they get these jobs, and how do they get trained for these jobs in these luxury lodges. So one day I asked if I could be driven around in one of the local villages. And I came upon this little school that was, I could see it needed a lot of work and a lot of development, but thought, you know, with our tax laws in the States, that maybe I could figure out a way to assist. So I was doing it in an ad hoc way, and I was doing it the way I knew I could do it. So I was talking to my accountant in New York, and he said, so why don't you form a nonprofit? And I said, oh, no, that's like starting a business. And over time, I realized that there was no way that I could do this on my own. I would have to do that. So that brings me back to creating limited partnerships, how to raise money, how to talk to bankers, how to talk to people and convince them to be a part of your
And the
dream.
project is mainly educational based.
Well, it's...
I mean, creating the environment in which you can learn.
Yes, that's critically important. I mean, we talk about education, and we talk about books, and we talk about teachers, and we talk about curriculum, and we talk about money. But without the facilities,
That's
proper
the point.
facilities, why are we talking about the other things?
There's a big problem in South Africa. How do we address the larger problem of South Africa? In your mind, I know it's a difficult question.
No,
How do you think we should approach it? Small little projects like you doing, or is there one big project that we should undertake as a country that will actually address poverty?
Well, I think the key is, and I think Bill Gates is doing it in a very big way, is collaboration. Even if you look at his 2015 letter that has just come out a couple weeks ago, he talks about global participation, global citizens. He talks about partnerships with, and Kofi Annan says the same thing. There are a lot of developments in South Africa and partnerships happening, but they're not scaled to what they need to be. So what we decided to do, and when I say we, I came together with a lot of professionals sitting around a table talking about, if we do this, how do we do it, and where will we get the resources and scale it? We don't do little projects anymore. We're doing a substantial education campus in Devlin, Soweto right now. And we're doing it with very little resources. Takes me back to, don't say no to me. Help me figure out how. So what we decided was we would do the skills training. We would offer opportunities, entrepreneurial experience to university students, design what is needed in a particular area. Of course, do all the research and planning before you design. And then shop those drawings to every supplier and every construction company that exists in this country. So we are doing these projects 90% in-kind sponsorship.
How many people do you have helping you?
Well, we have a lot of consultants. Our professional team is vast. Our supplier base is vast. And what happens with the concept is that we don't ask for money. We ask for 2 million rands worth of steel from a steel company. He looks at the drawings, he says, we have the capacity to do this, and they deliver the steel. I'm making it very simple. But we get them to participate within their capacity to do so. We don't have to go out and raise 2 million rand to pay him for the steel, which I think is a challenge anyway, because to raise 2 million rand for just the steel on a 30 million rand project, they're making profit. We are not looking to solve all the problems in South Africa. But we want to be a catalyst, and we want to be a part of the team that finds solutions to the problems. And this is one way to do it. So this current project, if we were to raise the money for it, would be about 30 million rand. We have 7 million in the ground, and I'm very proud to say that our partners have given all of that for free.
Deborah, we're going to have to wrap up. We're very thankful that we have people like you who give up so much energy, so much of their time to actually help those people who haven't got it. And we just hope that in the small clip that we're going to be showing here on TV, that it inspires other people perhaps to follow your lead.
Thank you.
You've been on the couch with Deborah Terhune and me, David Shapiro.